Business Uncomplicated. We are super excited for the next couple of podcasts coming up. We have the CEO of Key Learning, Cam Brewer, to talk about learning and AI and the human side of learning, which I think will be a really interesting conversation for people to listen to. We just finished taping an amazing conversation about leadership development with Christy Morgan, who's the president and CEO of Apex Learning. That really, again, touched upon the human element of business. And I think as we go through our conversations, a common thread has appeared no matter who we talk to. And I think it's the human element of business, which in the world of AI, I think is getting lost a bit. So I wanted to take today's episode and talk a little bit about the silos that exist within an organization, how connecting an organization is really what the future looks like, and how AI is really going to, in my opinion, start exposing that more than ever. So I want to start the conversation by talking about silos. It's something that I've talked about repeatedly when I was in corporate America. And a very good friend and coworker and I used to always talk about the hip bones connected to the leg bone. That, that old song plays in people's minds, and it's true. Everything's connected in your body. That's how your body functions. And we sometimes forget that in corporate America. So we create silos, and the silos exist for a reason. I mean, it's not because people love to be independent and working on their own. Some do. They exist to create accountability, focus, to drive that function forward, and that they have an outcome. So if you think of marketing, marketing's there to market the product, market the company, track leads, attract customers, throw events, get that top of the funnel going. Sales is responsible for taking those leads, bringing them through that sales funnel and closing them. CS, or customer success, is responsible for onboarding that customer, for making sure that they're successful through their journey with you, and hopefully ultimately getting that renewal because things have been so successful. All along, people are working with product to give product feedback or get product demos or to understand where the product's going so they can market it better, sell it better, and support it better. So these organizations exist within their silos to accomplish their mission within the company. So it's not a surprise they exist. The challenge is no one ever built a bridge. There are very few bridges that are built corporate wide between these organizations. When I worked at many companies, I would go talk to other departments and they'd be like, well, what do you do? What is your function here at X company? And I was always surprised when people asked me that question. I mean, my role, sure, they want to know the specifics about my role, and that you're not going to understand every role. But some of these questions were really about my organization, the organization I came from. And it confused me that people weren't aware beyond their silo what other people did, what they were responsible for, what they brought to the table. And if you're only interested in optimizing for your own metrics, if you're only interested in driving forth your agenda, then your silo isn't really part of the organization. It's just part of the silo. It exists in its own entity. And at times, the bigger issue of not creating these bridges is the information stays within that silo, or it dies within that silo and never sees the light of day. And so how do you expect other people in the organization to help drive forth the mission of the organization, help support your cause? I mean, let's face it, sales cannot be successful on their own. They need the marketing message. They need L&D to help train their team on the product. They need product to build a good product that sells. So how can they do that if they're not engaging with product and getting that information back to product about what the feedback from the customers are? How do they successfully navigate a contract without legal? The financial options without finance? Now, I'm not saying these silos exist in perpetuity and no one ever works together. They, of course, have inflection points where they need to work together. But more often, I've seen that these silos exist at the expense of the other, that they're not really driving forth that bigger vision of the company. Now, am I advocating everybody starts sitting with everybody and shadowing their job and knowing? No, I'm not. But it is a leadership challenge to bring forth and bring together the organization in a way that is sharing information that's relevant to each other. And so I feel like the silos eventually create the it's not my job culture. Well, it's not my responsibility to train sales. It's not my responsibility for me to tell CS how to support their customers. It's not my responsibility to get involved in whatever that is. And I would say that's bullshit. I think it's everybody's job to be involved in the company and the company's success and the customer success. And that means understanding beyond your silo. I've been fortunate to work in organizations or for companies where my job was to engage. So I see it a little differently than maybe some others. I've always worked in global companies. I've always worked in roles where I've had to reach across the aisle, whether it's operations or strategy, or we're working on a cross-functional project, or in consulting, you're working on a transformation project. So you need to engage multiple areas of the business. And there's so many times where I've seen people say, well, not my job, or it's always the way we've done it here. We've never engaged with that organization. So what happens when the silos don't build that bridge? When you don't have, so I would say, hip bone connected to the leg bone. If it's not connected, you're going to fall down. And I think that's what's happening a lot in organizations today. So why is connecting the dots so hard? But why is it so worth it? I think cross-functional work is messy. I think it's hard for owners to reach across the aisle, to articulate the challenge, but also take the time to learn what the other position is. Often in organizations, we're running at such a rapid pace that we don't slow down. We don't think of the other people's frustrations, the other people's challenges. And we sometimes have a tendency to look at their challenge as what they're putting on us, not what they're dealing with. And it's interesting to start then thinking about it in the persona, marketing persona, sales persona, customer persona. If you start thinking about it in terms of what type of person am I dealing with, and if you had kind of a chart and you said, sales persona and checked what the things they do, and marketing and checked the things they do, and you looked at that across your entire organization, internally and externally, where would you see the overlap? Where would you see those silos now start to connect? And then you start saying, okay, well, this is the inflection point. So beyond the metrics, which are critical, right? What are those metrics that run the organization? What are those conversations that people should be engaging in? What is those discussions, or what is that insight each other should be gaining from the other? And this isn't on a day-to-day basis, potentially, but it does require a different leadership approach. It does require somebody to understand the silos, cut through those silos, and start influencing the accountability between the groups. And the reason I think that's so important is then you're starting getting into what the outcomes might look like, where innovation happens. If you think about organizations as a series of processes, organizational frameworks. Then you start thinking about jobs to be done. So we had Rena on the podcast and talking about the 4 blocks. And one of the things we had talked about was this idea of jobs to be done. And when you think about it is, if you really examine the jobs to be done, do you really need to do that job? Does it add value? And if it doesn't add value to your silo, and it might be impacting another person's silo, then is that job effective for the organization? Are you really looking at it from an efficiency standpoint? And so leaders now have to come to the conclusion of how's my organization connected? And am I leaving it to these individuals to do this connectivity work themselves? Or have I created those bridges? The question I'd ask is, as a leader, am I as a leader working with the other leaders? Does my team see me engaging? When strategies come from the top down, annual planning, does it feel like the leaders sitting in that room together making that plan actually understood the connective tissue between those departments? If they didn't, then you're reinforcing the silo mentality. You didn't build that bridge, because the bridge starts at the strategy. The bridge starts at the leadership, the go-to-market leadership, sales and marketing and CS talking together, operations in that discussion. What metrics are we sharing? Finance, how are we budgeting for this? Are we budgeting 3 different places for the same technology, for the same for the same processes? Finance has a big role in breaking out the silos, because they're doling out the money to all these people. And if finance really looked at where the spend was going, is it duplicate? Is it the same? I've been in so many organizations where we have tool sprawl because leaders let each individual team go buy their own tools. Well, then IT has a problem because they have to manage all those tools. And those decisions go downhill, and they create operational inefficiency. They create waste. They create budget problems. And ultimately, they create confusion for the employees. So if we think about all this at the end of the day about the human in the loop, then they really create problems for employees and employees' ability to do their job, because then they're always negotiating between these things. Well, we have a tool that does that. Oh, yeah, but Barbara wants to buy this different tool. So we let Barbara buy it. Yeah, but we don't have anybody on the staff that understands that tool. Okay, we got to hire them. Well, we don't have any budget. So if you think about the silos and the decisions that are made and the connective tissue and the understanding of how the business gets run, it creates an inefficient business. It creates frustration for people. And it really doesn't create the outcomes for the company. If you think about the major initiatives your company has taken over the course of a particular time, 12, 24 months, when you started those objectives or those projects, and you had objectives and goals, and it was to reach X% savings or X% growth or whatever the outcome was, did it reach it? Throughout the program, did the program leadership come to you and say, hey, well, we forgot to engage these people, or hey, we didn't know so-and-so was doing the same thing, or we have a duplicate project doing this? You ever heard those things in your organization? Hey, why did Jack get to buy a new tool and we did? I've heard these examples all the time, whether it's technical, whether it's business process. Hey, how come the channel team is doing something different than the sales team? Well, they sell differently. Do they? Still selling the same product. Why are they more efficient potentially? I've been in organizations where channel sells 20 times faster than inside sales. Why is that? Why aren't we learning from each other? It's the same CRM. It's the same data. It's the same product. So I think that connecting the dots is a leadership imperative. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's critical to letting the silo be as effective as the silo needs to be while contributing to the larger organization. And I think these are coming to a head, for me at least, as I have conversations because of AI. So if we talk about the AI reality check, I think AI is just going to start exposing this more. And here's my rationale behind that. As we look at AI now is at the root using data as fuel to give you insights about your company. It's taking structured data, it's taking unstructured data, it's taking conversational data. So now those numbers and that feedback you got in the Slack group and the feedback you got on the ticket from support and the feedback you got on your marketing campaign now are no longer in the silo. The goal of AI is to connect those data sources and mine those data sources to tell you something you didn't know. So now what's going to come out of that data source? So if I am in sales, and I can mine all of marketing's data sources, I can mine all of CS and support and products data sources, what is it going to tell me? How much smarter am I going to get? Or how much conflict or duplication or mismatched data am I going to start surfacing? And so I think the reality check is we're going to start saying, do we really understand what's going on in our company? Are we really doing the right thing for our customers? Are we doing the right things for our employees? I think it just starts to surface a lot of information around the type of data we're collecting, how we're using that data, and how we're transforming the way our company works. And does it require now a new way of working? If you think about what is coming out of Davos last week, there was a lot of CEOs saying AI is not the technology that's going to change the world. It's the technology that's going to change how we work. It's the technology that's going to force our organizations to think differently about how we operate. And that's the key here. The silos and connecting the silos now elevate your thinking as an organization to force you to think differently. AI is going to be a catalyst, an imperative that you need to take advantage of to think differently about how your organization runs. Data has always been at the forefront of companies. I think harnessing that data has now be taken a different light because of AI. I think prior you had great dashboards and visuals, but I don't know if I've told a story that people could actually interpret. Now we're getting data in human language. It's taking the numbers and the conversations and saying, hey, this is what's going on. And it's starting to produce it in a way you can consume it in a different data in a different way. And I think that's making it more real. I think it's making it more digestible. And so now we're starting to see, well, the same problem that always existed in data will always exist. Garbage in is garbage out. That if you're not really looking at the entry points of your data and understanding what it's telling you, then you're going to have hallucinations. You're going to have misinterpretations of what that data is telling you. And so I think that if you start these AI projects without a sense of the bridge that you're going to connect eventually, they're going to fail. And we know, we've already seen from MIT and all these studies that 95% of these AI systems fail. Pilots are not scaling. Take whatever metric you want to take, but I think part of this has been the traditional reason why any transformation fails. You run too fast and you don't really have a strategy or vision or outcome you're trying to achieve. I think the other part of it is really that they're ignoring the human element. If you think about the data and the data that's created, It's created by humans. I mean, CRM system input by humans, marketing data inputted by an end user filling out a form on your website or capturing them at an event or buying data from a data service. Conversations that are had or have been traditionally notes taken by somebody writing notes in. If they write the wrong notes or they don't put in notes, you don't have that information. Now we're in a world where you have a call and we're capturing that conversation. We're capturing that sentiment. We're capturing those action items. So in theory, we're getting smarter through this data, but are we using the data the right way? Are we asking the right questions of our AI to surface the right data? Are we sharing that information in an appropriate way? Are we as humans looking at that data and creating that bridge between sales and marketing, between marketing and product, between marketing and CS, between sales and CS, sales and product, keep on doing the spoke and hub scenario? And, there are a lot of conversations to have. Can we change those conversations through data? Sure. Can we have better conversations than we've had before? Yeah, absolutely. So building those bridges, I think, is an imperative in the AI world. And so before you start the technology deployment, think about the outcome, think about the strategy, think about the vision. When CS wants to start a project around AI, where is it going? What is the connective tissue of the bridge I'm going to eventually build? Now, I'm not arguing that the pilots shouldn't go and you shouldn't be nimble and try to be agile. I'm saying that once that work is done and the hard work starts, it's about connecting that bridge. It's about breaking through the silos and creating a new way of thinking and using the human in the loop to do that work. So what's the path forward? So start with the customer backwards. So what does the customer experience actually warrant? If you knew everything there was to know about your customer in any role across the company, what would that conversation now look like with the customer? We've talked about this for years. CRM was going to equalize all the data, right? I remember sitting at Dreamforce and Salesforce, Mark Benioff would have the example of, well, I walked into the Marriott and the Marriott knows who I am and what degree to set my room at, how many pillows I like and what I want for dinner and the reservations that they need to make and this personalized experience. We never really got there because we were always dependent on connecting those dots, connecting those silos, collecting that information, and leveraging the adoption of that system. Well, now we have an opportunity to potentially have that information in multiple systems and disparate systems and start bringing it together and start having a different conversation, having that personalization. So if you start with the customer, and you broke through every silo in your company and you could give that information to anybody sitting in front of a customer, CS rep, sales, marketing, product, what would that conversation look like? What would that customer experience look like? I think it would be very different. And I think people would be pleasantly surprised at the type of engagement that you would have with them. Because then everybody owns company data and the success of that data and the input of that data and the reason why that input is important. And everybody owns now understanding more about the mission of the company, because the mission of the company is the success of your. Think about rewarding collaboration. So it's not just about people who crush departmental metrics. It's about people who think beyond their department. It's about the connectors. Now, not everybody's going to be a connector and you can't reward everybody. But what if you started rewarding people for that behavior? What if you started encouraging that behavior, recognizing that behavior? What if leaders started displaying that behavior and modeling that behavior? What would that look like? What if you built that bridge? What if that cross-functional relationship wasn't just when the crisis happened, because we all have that, right? Customers are going to trip, get CS on the phone, get sales on the phone, get product on the phone, right? Turn the account red, like red account, run, 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 run. What if you didn't have red accounts because you didn't need them? Because everybody was already informed. And everybody was informed when there was a problem, who is accountable for that problem? Who do they go to solve? And if you really treated data as a shared asset, a company asset, not a department asset, so you don't own your company, you're accountable for authoring that data. You're accountable for putting that data where it needs to be. And in some cases, being smart about the data you capture. But what if you created that insight for your partners, your team members? What if you provided context to that data and enriched that data and contributed that data to the company? How much smarter would the company be? How much smarter would your organization be? How much more efficient and effective would you be? So, this is a conversation I think we're going to continue to track. I'm so passionate about breaking silos, connecting organizations. And I would just ask you to think about that. Think about that in your role as a leader, that as your role in the organization. And how do you create those relationships? How do you create that bridge? So, some of the questions maybe to ask yourself is, where is the base gap between departments in your organization right now? If you sat down and sketched that out, what does it look like? What's one insight that lives in a part of your business that would be gold, absolute gold for another part of the business that would help them advance their cause, their strategy? If AI could connect any functions in your company tomorrow, which two would be the most valuable? So if you're going to invest in AI, which you're going to, where's the best place to start? We always talk about use cases and pick the most impactful use cases. Well, that's connecting. Well, how could that be the most valuable? Because we know we're connecting to organizations that are going to create a symbiotic relationship that's going to drive forth results. What would you change or have changed about how leaders are developed and rewarded by breaking down the silos? That's an important one. People are getting paid every day to lead the organization. Is it effective? Are they doing the best job? Are they encouraging the collaboration? Are they looking for opportunities to collaborate? Are they teaching collaboration to their employees and modeling that behavior? I haven't always seen it. I will admit as a leader, I haven't. But in the new world order, where we talk about AI, we talk about the democratization of data, the democratization of technology, it's also an imperative to change how we run our businesses and how we go to market with our businesses. And that means every leader of every company needs to now rethink how that organization is structured, how it operates, and how it executes. And breaking down the silos, connecting the organization, and bringing the right data together is going to bring forth a different mentality, a different outcome, and a more successful organization. So we're going to continue to talk about this topic. Please engage in the comments and reach out if you want to talk more about it. But we're passionate about breaking through the silos. We're passionate about connecting organizations and technology. And I think together those things can really make a powerful outcome and a more united organization that's going to drive customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction. So look forward to next week with the podcast from Christy and more about leadership. And in February, we're going to be talking a lot about learning and employees. We have a great podcast, as we talked about at the top of the hour, from Cam Brewer, the CEO of Key Learning. We're also going to talk to a CEO of Atlas, Jim McCoy, about the human side of hiring. So Atlas is a company that is in the recruiting space. So we're going to talk about what's going on in the recruiting space. We always see information about layoffs, all these layoffs. Where are the jobs? What is the future of the job market? And how can people really start thinking about the next evolution of their career? So as always, stay with us, stay engaged, We'd love to hear from you. So we'll talk to you soon.